WKXX Fox Sports 102.9 presents the College Football Playoff National Championship Preview Show. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy as we set the stage for Alabama versus Ohio State. Now let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathangani.
And welcome into the Fox Sports 102.9 National Championship Preview Show. I'm Chase Robinson, joined again by Gerhard Mathangani from WOTM TV, host of Overtime. You can see him Monday through Wednesday nights there on WOTM. Gerhard, thanks for coming in and joining us again.
Not a problem. This has been great. It was fun last week, and it should be another great one this week.
Absolutely. And let's talk about those games from last week for just a second as we get things started here. Alabama, Notre Dame, that game kind of went like we thought it would. I mean, Alabama looked good, and Notre Dame really not on the same level as the Crimson Tide. Of course, Devontae Smith winning the Heisman this week, had another great game. Najee Harris showed out again. Mac Jones had a great game. So pretty much typical Alabama football last Friday against Notre Dame.
Yeah, no question. And I think what was really kind of the determining thing was how they started the game. Now, I know at the end of the game, it was what we talked about earlier, where Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide staff and the players know that they have another 4 quarters coming up in a few days. And so maybe let the foot off the gas a little bit. And then Notre Dame got that, basically garbage time touchdown there at the end. In all honesty, it was probably a 31-7 kind of football game. We saw at the end Notre Dame had that no-quit mentality, but what we saw from Alabama is what we expected to see from Alabama. A dynamic offense that came to play, took care of business early, and then kind of cruised late, slammed the door, and then marched themselves to Miami.
So I think, we talked last week on our semifinal preview show. Notre Dame was really wanting to show the world that they deserve to be there. They deserve to be looked at when it comes to the college football playoff. Based on their performance last week, moving forward, can we say that they deserve a shot in the playoffs each year?
I think we all got a little bit hyperventilated, and we all probably took the ACC probably a little bit more, thought of them a little bit more closer to the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big 12. We thought of them a little bit higher of a light than they probably deserved. I don't think the ACC was this great conference. And I think going into the game, we were all fooled by that because there were no non-conference games. And so we didn't have a real bead on this league. It was a 2-team league, and both teams ended the year really in an embarrassing fashion. And I think going back, yes, hindsight will always be 20/20. But I think you're right. You posed this question last week, and I think that it was a good one, and I think that your stance on it was a good one too, that I don't know if Notre Dame actually deserved to be there. And I thought that they did, but looking back on it, I think Texas A&M was actually playing better football at the time. Cincinnati was probably playing better football at the time. And, of course, you can have your beef with what Cincinnati did. Once again, hindsight will always be 20/20, but at the same time, I do think what we did is we overvalued the ACC.
Yeah, and this past week, like I mentioned a second ago, Devontae Smith winning the Heisman Trophy. We'll talk Clemson, Ohio State in a second. Trevor Lawrence, though, finished second there in the Heisman poll, and then Mac Jones. Your thoughts on that? Just we both said Devontae Smith was probably going to win the Heisman.
That's
he
right.
did. A lot of people thought so. They voted for him. Based on last week's performance, I know last week really didn't count in the Heisman race, but Mac Jones, once again, looked really great.
Yeah, 25 of 30, 297 yards and 4 touchdowns. He, to me, should have been number 2. I don't know how anybody saw towards the end of the season and said that that Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones were even on the same page. I think Trevor Lawrence was not playing as good of football as Mac Jones was, plus 2 less games because of the COVID situation. I think Mac Jones was number 2, honestly, in my opinion, as far as the overall dynamic players, and probably should have been number 2 in the voting as well. Nobody remembers the second place and third place, and so there's really no point in getting up in arms about it. However, I think going into this game, it is really important because you do have, in my opinion, the 2 best players in the same huddle. But as we said last week, I think Devontae Smith earned it, and I'm glad that the voters didn't do the kind of cute thing, didn't do the weird thing, didn't do the just trying to make things different. They picked the most explosive, dynamic, best player in college football, and I think they hit it right on the head.
Absolutely. They got that one right for sure. Let's move to the Ohio State-Clemson game. a game that we really didn't know what to expect going in.
Right.
We mentioned this last week. Ohio State, as of last Friday, had only played 7 games. So we really didn't have a feel of what the team looked like, what we were going to see on Friday. We saw complete domination from Ohio State from the start, shutting down Clemson's defense, which not a lot of people can say that they've done. Your thoughts on Ohio State Clemson?
It was really, really interesting. And I think like a lot of people in and around college football, were just super impressed by what they did. But then when you take a look back, you take a step back and you look at that game, you realize that was the 7th game of the season. Normally, the 7th game of the season is right in the middle of the year as the team is finding its groove. We're good at this. We're not good at this. Ohio State's there now. And they're playing a disjointed schedule, obviously, because they're doing it right as the playoffs were coming. But they were able to find that groove. They were able to find that when Alabama beat Kentucky 63-3. They were able to find that game that they knew this is who and what we are. And then on top of that, Dabo ranks us 11th. And then he says all the things that he says. So they had the external motivation as well as now they were completely healthy. You nailed it on top. You nailed it on the head as far as the picks go, that they were going to bring something to the table that Ohio State or that Clemson hadn't seen to this point, that nobody had seen to that point. And I mean, just tip your cap, because yeah, you can make all the arguments you want to about them being there or not being there or whatever. They took advantage of the position they were in, and they were able to win the game in dominating fashion.
Yeah, Trey Sermon, the running back for Ohio State, man, he was incredible.
Oh, yeah.
And put up some big numbers there, had really the game of his life, really, and especially in the position. But quarterback Justin Fields as well, even with him, and we'll talk about his injury a little bit later on, but even with him taking a shot to the ribs, you wouldn't have known it in the game he played. So much adrenaline, I think, for that Ohio State team that you weren't going to bring them down.
Exactly. And the biggest thing I think that stands out is they were able to do both. And one of the things that Ryan Day always talks about is, everybody loves the passing game, and the passing game is great. But we've seen teams that just pass the ball all the way around. You see the Washington States, and they don't win the big one. Why? Because they can't run the ball consistently. Ohio State's doing this nice little thing. Same with Alabama with Najee Harris. Ohio State's doing this thing with Trey Sermon right now. These last 2 games have been incredible. The Big Ten championship game and the college football playoff semifinal game. I mean, he took the team as far as the running game on his back. And then Justin Fields doing the same thing from his quarterback position. Justin Fields was 22 of 28. You take those 2 numbers together, he had 6 interceptions. He had 6 touchdowns. And I think that he has the poise. He has the running ability, took that shot, as you mentioned, was able to come back, bounce back, and then throw 2 beautiful dimes into the end zone for touchdowns, and then go on and roll in dominating fashion. I think what impressed me the most was that it wasn't this fluke thing. It wasn't double reverse passes and whatnot. They were able to run the football when they wanted to, throw the football when they wanted to, and dominate one of the better teams in college football.
Yes, and they did it. They did it well. Ohio State with a big win over Clemson, and that will match them up with Alabama in the national championship game Monday night. And as we sit here doing this show, it's kind of up in the air right now as far as if Ohio State will have enough players available to play the game on Monday night. If not, they're expecting to moving it to the 18th. But what we're in uncharted territory here.
Sure.
We have been all season.
For sure.
And now thinking about moving a national championship game, which is hard for most of us to grasp. Do you think that just what are your thoughts on this? Because it's even a strange thought to have of moving a national championship game.
It really is. But as you mentioned, this has been kind of a weird year as it relates to all of this. I do think it is worth it, depending on how and who would be out for the game. I think it is worth it to push it back. However, what we're seeing in the world of college football, and I think a lot of people who might be anti-Big Ten, is just like, how many breaks will Ohio State get? Because as it sits right now, and obviously we don't have the full information, we don't have who tested positive, who's out with contact tracing. We don't have that information. It's not privy to us, and I don't think it should be. Whatever medical HIPAA laws, whatever it is that prevents the media, prevents the regular people from knowing, who's testing positive, what is the contact tracing, who's going to be out. Yeah, we're not privy to that information. We just know the reports, and we know who might be out, who's quarantining and whatnot. It looks like and it sounds like a lot of these will be Ohio State issues. Now, if it is the same situation as we saw in the Big Ten championship game, where they were missing the entire receiving group, I think that if it's a situation like that, if it's the running back group and it's not Trey Sermon, if it's the linebacker group and it's not some of their dynamic linebackers, if it's the defensive back group, two of the better corners in the country for Ohio State, if it's that, then I do think we need to probably take a step back and play that game 1 week further in order to have everybody at full strength or as close to full strength as you can get. Because who's to say in the week off there's not the same issues at Alabama? Like you just don't know. Obviously, you just can't keep dragging it on and play the national championship game on Valentine's Day, but you can at some point try to mitigate things in a weird year. I think college football has been really flexible. I think the NFL has been really flexible. I like what they've done to this point. And at this point, to me, if it's 53 scholarship players, let's just try as best as we can to get the best 53 on both sides of the sideline down in Miami playing for the national championship.
Yes, and hopefully we can on Monday night. When we come back, we'll keep breaking down Alabama and Ohio State in the national championship game when we return on the National Championship Preview Show on Fox Sports 102.9.
Waldrop Manufacturing, McClellan Boulevard, Anniston, and North Main Street in Boaz has over 30 years in the metal roofing business. Carports start at $5.95 cash and carry. Waldrop offers over 3 times the rust protection on framing, and their tubing is almost 2 times stronger than their competitors. So when you need a metal building, carport, boat cover, pole barn, or workshop, call Waldrop Manufacturing in Anniston, 256-820-5765. In Boaz at 256-593-9933 or WaldropMetalBuildings.com.
WKXX Fox Sports 102.9 will be your home for the 2021 Etowah County Basketball Tournament. Every boys and girls game live. January 18th through 22nd, exclusively on Fox Sports 102.9.
Live coverage of the Etowah County Basketball Tournament will be brought to you by Liberty Bank, Southeast Auto Parts, Butler Electric, People's Independent Bank, and Copperleaf Properties agent Joey Statham. The Etowah County Basketball Tournament on Fox Sports 102.9. I'm sure you already know, but baseball cards are back and bigger than ever. The biggest question we get is, how do I get started? There's only one place to go: Deep Fried Breaks. Blake runs the show there, and he's giving a discount to our listeners to get started. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Deep Fried Breaks. DM Blake and tell him that WKXX sent you for a special discount. Deep Fried Breaks. DeepFriedBreaks.com. Tell him WKXX sent you.
WKXX Fox Sports 102.9 presents the College Football Playoff National Championship Preview Show. Now let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathangani.
And welcome back into the National Championship Preview Show here on Fox Sports 102.9. I'm Chase Robinson alongside Gerhard Mathangani, and we're breaking down this Alabama-Ohio State championship game. Should be a good one. And like we mentioned, Ohio State, big win over Clemson. During the game, their quarterback, Justin Fields, goes down for just a moment with an injury that looked to be with his ribs. He came back to the game, had a great performance. You could tell he was in a lot of pain, the shots they were showing on the sideline. Gerhard, will he be ready physically for this game? You're playing a tough Alabama defense. They're going to hit you hard. Where is he at right now?
I don't know precisely where he's at, but you can't take a shot like that, and you can't look the way he did and then just bounce back to me in just a few days. The ribs are very, very sensitive, and of course, Ohio State's not disclosing a lot, and part of that's gamesmanship. They're not even making Justin Fields available to the media as of right now. They're taking everybody and they're putting them out in the media. They're not putting Justin Fields out there, and I get it because the first 10 questions he'll be asked will be about his body, how he feels, and whatnot. So there's a little game. There's some gamesmanship there going on with Ohio State in their, whether it's their medical department and whatnot. We still don't even know what happened in the 10. Right. We know the word injections was the word that came out of there, and that was Justin Fields and the medical people and whatnot. So I don't really know specifically how he can, but just knowing the way the human body works, being in a human body, I know that's a really sensitive area of the body. I don't see that automatically being 100% in a few days and maybe a few weeks. Maybe if it's 3 or 4 weeks out, the old school way where it's 30 days between those two games, then maybe. But I mean, I just don't know, and I don't think so. But at the same time, seeing the way he finished that game, I don't know if he still won't be able to play top level football. I still think he can play top level football the same way he did on Friday night.
Yeah, and you mentioned Coach Ryan Day, and second-year head coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's been on the offensive side of the game, but has just really come into the head coaching light. But it looks to be that he is up there as far as head coaches.
Yeah.
Just the way the game plan going into that Clemson game. Now he's playing probably the greatest college football coach of all time this week, who's, you know, been in this situation a lot. This is Ryan Day's first national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
What is it going to be like for him, though, preparing for this, being a second-year head coach?
It's interesting because he's not only just the head coach, but he calls the plays. I mean, there is this kind of notion in the world of college football. You kind of have two different coaches. You have the Nick Saban coach, who basically he's the CEO. He makes all the decisions on fourth down. He makes timing decisions, plays the clock, knows the timeouts, knows the situations. That in a regular game on a Saturday against A&M or a Saturday against Purdue in Ryan Day's case is so much different from a national championship game when it's close and the score's a little disjointed. You're down by 5, you're up by 5, go for 2, don't punt on fourth down inside your own 43. Like small things like that. I don't know, but he hasn't given me any reason to believe to this point that he can't handle those things. And being under the tutelage of Urban Meyer, I do think that he'll probably call Urban a couple times this week and kind of get a bead on how to play not only Alabama, but some of the things, some of the characteristics to take with him into this week. Obviously, you don't know what it's going to be until he's actually in the fire, but he hasn't shown it to me at this point anything that makes me think that he can't do it. However, I do think going now against, as you mentioned, the greatest college football coach of all time, if not the greatest coach of all time, period, in the history of the sport, I think that it is a little bit different. And I don't know if there's any kind of trepidation or anything in there because they both have 5-star players on both sides of the field.
Right.
It'll be about, can you win in the margins? Now, can you think clearly in the margins when you're calling plays and at the same time trying to find out the bigger picture of the game? He has asked himself to do a lot in relation to Ohio State football. But he's done a lot so far, and this is obviously his biggest test, and we'll see how he handles it on Monday night. But as of right now, he hasn't given me any reason to believe that he can't do it.
Right, and he had a great game plan against Clemson.
For sure.
And it really exposed Brent Venables' defense from Clemson, who, like I mentioned at the top, not a lot of teams have been able to do, but he was able to work around that and had a great game plan going into that game.
No doubt. And I think the way he was able to handle and maneuver the fact that his starting quarterback was kind of questionable for a little while there, he had a, number one, you mentioned it, great game plan. And then he's able to use his players to be able to execute that. And he's got a great system. He knows these schemes, and he's kind of one of these kind of up and coming coaches that see the game a little bit differently. And you think of guys like Lane Kiffin, you think of guys like Steve Sarkisian, who are just processing the game differently, finding these unique matchups and winning these games in the margin. He's doing that. He's one of these guys, but he's also doing it with thoroughbreds. Yeah. And so you take a guy like Steve Sarkisian, you take a guy like Ryan Day, you're seeing kind of genius level football. But at the same time, that genius level football will also be mixed with, hey, tough decision, down by 4, fourth quarter, ball on the 43, just what I mentioned earlier, just situational stuff. And I think that those situations will come to a head this week, and we'll see what Ryan Day's made of. And I think he is one of these next level coaches. We think it with Todd Herman. We think it with some of these guys that are kind of these up and coming guys. We kind of now know it with Ryan Day in his second year.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's got a big task this week with Alabama, and big news coming out of Tuscaloosa this week. Jalen Waddle, who went out in the game against Tennessee on October 24th, is going to be back in some way, shape, form, or fashion Not sure how much he'll play, what
Right.
his, how everything is with him. But he has been practicing this week, which means he'll probably be on the field somehow, some way Monday night, which is going to be huge for Alabama.
No doubt. And I think there's two ways to look at this. Is this kind of a decoy situation, which it could be, or is this like a Terrell Owens situation? I don't know if the audience will remember, but there was that year that the Philadelphia Eagles went to the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. Terrell Owens, I think, broke his ankle, or it was a lower body injury, and just a ridiculous comeback. I think like 4, 5, 6 weeks, and was able to come back. In that game, he had, I think, 9 catches for over 120 yards, didn't score, and they didn't win the game. But everybody thought, well, there's a lot of people who thought, well, he'll be a decoy out there. He'll just basically take your top corner, take him out of the picture, maybe drag your safety out there, and then create one-on-one matchups everywhere else. He wasn't. He actually came and played in the game and was successful in the game. I think Jalen Waddle, until we actually see him on the field, and I think our first chance of seeing him, we've seen him in practice, and some of the clips that Alabama has put out, and Alabama's being really cautious about what they say and how they put it out, and how they're kind of crafting the story. He looks like the old Jalen Waddle, and if he's that, well, then Ohio State's in a lot of trouble, because I think with Mac Jones, with Najee Harris, with the Heisman Trophy winner, and with Jalen Waddle, that's 4 of the top, I would think, maybe 6, 7 players in college football. And if he can be what Terrell Owens was in that Super Bowl, well, I think that we might be able to see what one of the greatest offenses we've ever seen collectively on the field all at the same time in Miami Monday night.
Yeah, and you talk about the Alabama offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian, who we know filled in for Nick Saban against Auburn. He is departing Alabama to go to Texas to become their next head coach, which I think is a great move for Texas. He's proven to be kind of a comeback from his past at Alabama. But there's always questions going into a game where your offensive coordinator already has another job. Mm-hmm. We've seen this at Alabama with Lane Kiffin. Steve Sarkisian actually came in for Kiffin in the national championship game, and it was somewhat disastrous, as some would say. Here's Nick Saban commenting on that, though, on Steve Sarkisian coaching in this game.
We've had several of these situations where we've had guys playing in the national championship game, and guys are getting head coaching jobs someplace else. And I think it's up to each individual. I went through it when I became the head coach at Michigan State, and I was the defensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns with Bill Belichick. And we had like 5 or 6 games left to play in the season, and had a chance to get in the playoffs, which we did, and went 2 deep in the playoffs, won the first game, lost the second. But I think you just have to, separate yourself and focus on, look, if it wasn't for the players, at the Cleveland Browns being the best defense, I probably would have never got the Michigan State job. So you kind of owe it to the players to give your best, to do your best to help them get prepared for the game so they can play well in the game. That's how I always felt. I think that's how Sark feels. And, most of the guys in the past have been able to do that and been effective. And it's not been a distraction for us. And, we're going to try to help manage it every way that we can so that it's not a distraction for us this year.
That was Nick Saban commenting there on Steve Sarkisian going to Texas and still coaching in this game. What do you think in a situation like this? Because, like I mentioned, we saw this with Lane Kiffin, Sark coming in for Kiffin, and it didn't end well for Alabama.
Right.
What do you think going into a game like this with a coach who's got his mind on trying to recruit, trying to get a staff together at a very prominent Texas program? This isn't any school he's going to. It's Texas, one of the most prominent college football teams. Mm-hmm. What do you think going into a game like this for a coach like Steve Sarkisian?
I think this is so interesting because you set it up perfectly. You teed it up well, because Steve Sarkisian was the guy that came in for Lane Kiffin, and there's a lot of Alabama fans, people, I think a lot of people connected to the program, realized that Alabama didn't put their best out there. They didn't put what they thought was their best out there in that game, in that matchup. I think because it is Steve Sarkisian, he understands that you can worry about the Texas job on the 13th or the 12th or whatever day after the national championship game. You can worry about that job then, This job right now is to put together a good game plan, good 60 minutes for this Alabama football team. Now, he's met the media a lot, and literally from moment one, from the very first press conference he had, a virtual press conference, when he was introduced as the new head coach at Texas, he didn't give Texas fans all of this, I'm with you day one or whatever. He kept saying, I have this commitment, a 2-year commitment to Nick Saban, to these players, to Alabama. I think Nick Saban has also mentioned, and you heard there in the soundbite, talking about the commitment. You wouldn't have the Texas job if it weren't for these players, if it weren't for this team. I do think that there is some kind of clarity that you might not have had with a Lane Kiffin, or maybe I'm not saying immature, but just a not as mature coach. I think that these things kind of meet at a perfect spot. His maturity, Steve Sarkisian's maturity, him understanding where Nick Saban's coming from, and then being able to play this week out. Because I know that Steve Sarkisian understands that, hey, the Texas job, everything at Texas, you're not losing a 5-star because you're game planning this week. You're not going to lose the Oklahoma game in 2 years because you're trying to figure out how to use Jalen Waddle this week. Your game plan right now for this game doesn't affect adversely with what you're going to do at Texas. And I think he's been able to compartmentalize that, so he doesn't necessarily worry about getting a staff and whatnot. I think he can put all of his focus into this game. So this game is a little different. I understand the hesitation, maybe from Alabama fans, like, oh no, our OC is about to go, and will he have his eye on Texas? I think this situation particularly is different from all the reasons that you mentioned, and some of the reasons that I did too. Texas is going nowhere. If it's Rutgers, then yeah, you probably have a lot more things to do. But I think Texas, he's in a good position, took a good job where he can still focus this week and then not lose anything in the future there in Austin.
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian won the Broyles Award this year for the top assistant coach, and will be heading to Texas following the national championship game. We'll keep breaking it down for you as we roll on the Fox Sports 102.9 National Championship Preview Show. Stay with us.
WKXX, Fox Sports 102.9 will be your home for the 2021 Etowah County Basketball Tournament. Every boys and girls game live. January 18th through 22nd, exclusively on Fox Sports 102.9.
Live coverage of the Etowah County Basketball Tournament will be brought to you by Liberty Bank, Southeast Auto Parts, Butler Electric, People's Independent Bank, and Copperleaf Properties agent Joey Statham. The Etowah County Basketball Tournament on Fox Sports 102.9. I'm sure you already know, but baseball cards are back and bigger than ever. The biggest question we get is, how do I get started? There's only one place to go: Deep Fried Breaks. Blake runs the show there, and he's giving a discount to our listeners to get started. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Deep Fried Breaks. DM Blake and tell him that WKXX sent you for a special discount. Deep Fried Breaks. DeepFriedBreaks.com. Tell him WKXX sent you.
Waldrop Manufacturing, McClellan Boulevard, Anniston, and North Main Street in Boaz has over 30 years in the metal roofing business. Carports start at $5.95 cash and carry. Waldrop offers over 3 times the rust protection on framing, and their tubing is almost 2 times stronger than their competitors. So when you need a metal building, carport, boat cover, pole barn, or workshop, call Waldrop Manufacturing in Anniston, 256-820-5765. In Boaz at 256-593-9933 or WaldropMetalBuildings.com.
WKXX Fox Sports 102.9 presents the College Football Playoff National Championship Preview Show. Now let's go inside the Fox Sports 102.9 studio with Chase Robinson and Gerhard Mathangani.
The goal was never just to beat Clemson. The goal was to win the national championship. And all these guys who we didn't have a season, they were fighting to get back to play for a national championship. So while it was an emotional win, that wasn't the goal. The goal was to win this one. And so I'd be disappointed if we didn't play well in this game. This is everything on the line, everything we wanted. And so now all the focus goes on Alabama. And we just got to prepare. And the most prepared team is going to win the game. And we have to prepare, like we did the week before. The good news is I think we have a little confidence going into the game that we've shown what we can do. And now we got to go do it again. It's a good lead up time. We get 10 days here and, to kind of, rest up a little bit and then get to work and practicing. And so I think we'll be fresh and ready to roll. The virus still hasn't gone away, so we got to make sure we're really vigilant in that area, which is still a struggle, day in and day out. It's just hard, but the preparation is just going to continue to go on. And again, we said it going into the last game, we're going to have to play our best game. We're going to have to even play better than we did last week to beat Alabama.
That was Ryan Day, head coach of Ohio State, talking about, their goal was not just to play in the semifinals. Right. It was to make the national championship game. They had done so in really dominating Clemson. We talked in the open about the Clemson-Ohio State game, and Ohio State played out of their mind. Of course, we haven't seen them a lot, but they really exposed Clemson in some different ways. Will they be able to play another game like that? Because, like I said, they played out of their mind.
Right. The question is of, hey, did they peak? Did they play their best game way too early? I think they're valid questions. I do think that there's an element of this team that it has been up and down this year. You take a look at the Michigan State game, and they played great football, put up 50-plus points, and they were great in that game. And then you take a look at maybe the Indiana game, where they played well to start, but that game was close at the end. Then you take a look at the Northwestern game. They only put up 22 points. They really needed some desperation plays there close to the end. They needed Trey Sermon to go crazy in that game in order to win. We've seen this roller coaster ride that we do see with most teams. So then that will tell you if they just found their peak, then a down game is coming, especially with the kind of break that they would have. And if they have an extended break and they play this game on the 18th, then you'd have even more things to worry about there with Ohio State. I don't know if they can play as well as they did against Clemson. And they had so much motivation going into that. Intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. They were incentivized to prove Dabo Swinney wrong. And I think here in this kind of game, I think for them, it will have to all be intrinsic. We've heard their corners. Williamson is a great corner, one of the top corners in America, also with Patrick Surtain. Wade is another one for Ohio State, who's a good one, and those are the two guys that Steve Sarkisian talked about. They'll have plenty of motivation. If Waddle's back and the Heisman Trophy winner, just the one-on-one matchups, the defensive line for Ohio State will have that matchup against the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line from Alabama. These are all intrinsic things, though. These were all, hey, we want to prove that we are the best to the best. Not necessarily Nick Saban coming out and saying, we don't have to that much game film to study because they only play 7 games. So whatever the case is, I think that they'll have to find it intrinsically. I don't know if they could play to that level of the game against Clemson, but if they do find a way to get some stops against Alabama, the way they played offensively, they don't even need that kind of game to beat Alabama. They just need a strong game, a good game, and they'll put themselves in a position to win. And after that, kind of goes back to the whole Ryan Day situation. Can you handle it situationally in that matchup?
Yeah, and I think that's what it's going to come down to because of the fact that a lot of motivation going into that game,
right?
And so that's going to be something to watch here coming up on Monday nights. It is prediction time to predict this game. Gerhard, who you got Monday night?
I like Alabama. I like a high-scoring game in this context. I do think that we have a situation where I think one of the teams, the team that wins, will end up having to do something special. Special teams big play. It don't have to be a touchdown, but just special teams big play, a defensive big play. I think that'll be the separation in this game. I do think it's high scoring. However, I do see Alabama pulling it out there towards the end. I see something like a 48-31 type game, and I think Ohio State can keep it close, but I think Alabama kind of has that Mike Tyson knockout blow towards the end, something big, maybe third quarter, early parts of the fourth quarter that really put it away, kind of what Clemson or Ohio State did to Clemson in that matchup. I do think that there is a knockout punch coming from Alabama, and that might come later in the game. So I do see Alabama scoring a lot. I see Ohio State scoring a lot. I think it'll be super entertaining. But then towards the end, I think that the better team that's played the most games will come away with the win. You?
Yeah, I agree with you. Both teams can score points. Alabama comes in averaging 48 points per game. Ohio State, 43 points per game. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to come down to the talent Alabama has. They're going to be able to score more because of, you mentioned it, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris, Mac Jones, some of the best players in college football. I think, if one of those guys were to go out by chance, then I think Ohio State would have a chance. But just with all the talent Alabama has and the way they're able to score, it's not just your simple routes. No, Devontae Smith making these incredible catches. Steve Sarkisian, the way that he draws up these plays, I think they have a big an upper hand over Ohio State. So I got the Crimson Tide as well. Gerhard, thank you for taking time with us and joining us the last couple of weeks as we preview these things.
No doubt whatsoever. This has been fun. This has always been great, and it's great to see another Alabama team or a team from the SEC back in the championship game. It was excellent once again, and hope for a great game Monday night.
Yes, you can catch Gerhard Mathangani Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights on WOTM TV with his show Overtime. Thank you so much for taking time with us today on our National Championship Preview Show. Next Thursday night, we'll be previewing the Etowah County Basketball Tournament. WKXX is your home for the 2021 Etowah County Basketball Tournament. Every game, boys and girls, will be live here on Fox Sports 102.9. So tune in next Thursday evening as we preview that tournament. Thanks so much for listening in. Have a great day.
WKXX, Fox Sports 102.9 will be your home for the 2021 Etowah County Basketball Tournament. Every boys and girls game live. January 18th through 22nd, exclusively on Fox Sports 102.9.
Live coverage of the Etowah County Basketball Tournament will be brought to you by Liberty Bank, Southeast Auto Parts, Butler Electric, People's Independent Bank, and Copperleaf Properties agent Joey Statham. The Etowah County Basketball Tournament on Fox Sports 102.9.